Have you ever found yourself considering what it truly takes to greenlight a massive industrial project? I mean, not just the grand vision, right?
But the nitty-gritty details, the engineering, the financials,
Yeah.
all that stuff that makes it, real.
Exactly. Especially when we're talking about something that aims to blend traditional agriculture with cutting-edge biochemical production. It's sort of a fascinating tightrope walk.
Between innovation and just the hard numbers.
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into a really compelling real-world case study. It's the detailed techno-economic analysis for a proposed new butanol production plant down in Brazil.
Right, this is from a company called Raizen, who are already a big deal in agriculture there. And the plan is to use sugarcane as the feedstock.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the intricate engineering, really scrutinize the financial projections, and, identify the inherent risks. Can we figure out if this expansion is actually viable?
What are the key numbers? What are the variables that could make or break such a huge investment?
And maybe what broader lessons can we learn about the challenges of scaling up this kind of bio-innovation?
And what's fascinating here, this isn't just like a theoretical exercise. We're essentially looking over the shoulder at a comprehensive technical report.
It's almost as if we're sitting in the boardroom with Hayley's executives, trying to decide go or no go.
Exactly. We're looking at the real-world implications of every design choice, every financial assumption they've made.
Okay, let's unpack this journey. First, maybe some vital context about Hayley. Who are they?
Well, imagine a company that's already a bit of an agricultural powerhouse. They're operating 20 sugarcane processing plants across Brazil. Big operation.
20 plants, wow.
Yeah, and they're not just growing sugarcane. They're, an empire churning out massive amounts of sugar, ethanol, and even electricity from the cane's fibrous leftovers, the bagasse.
Right, but now they're looking to expand, diversify their products, and their next big idea is butanol.
Exactly. Butanol, it's a chemical with a lot of different industrial uses, solvents, maybe even potential biofuels down the line.
And their strategy here is pretty clever, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's smart. The plan is to install this new butanol facility right next door to an existing ethanol plant. That specific location is 21 degrees south, 49 degrees west, roughly.
And that co-location, that's critical.
Absolutely critical. It lets them immediately tap into existing infrastructure for stuff like milling the cane, clarifying the juice.
Ah, okay, so that saves a lot of upfront cost and hassle.
Totally. That kind of synergy, it massively impacts the initial investment and the operational efficiency. Makes the whole thing look much better from the start. They're building on strength, not, from scratch.
Right, and the scale of this ambition is, well, it's pretty impressive even for a company Hayley's size.
It is. The new butanol plant is designed to process an additional 100 tons of sugarcane per hour.
Per hour.
Per hour, operating 200 days a year, just during the cane harvest season.
Wow. To give you a sense of that, 100 tons an hour, that's like filling maybe 2 standard semi-truck trailers with cane every single hour for 200 days straight.
Yeah, that's a lot of sugar cane and potentially a lot of butanol.
So as you mentioned, the beauty of sticking this onto an existing plant is that the extra sugar cane gets milled and clarified using the facilities already there.
Exactly. It's only after that initial processing that the sugarcane juice gets diverted to the brand new butanol section. Smart way to expand, minimize capital, maximize assets.
Okay, so once that juice is ready, purified, prepared, it heads into 2 main areas in the new factory. Area B001, fermentation, and B002, distillation. Let's start with B0001. That's where the biological magic happens.
Right, the fermentation unit. So first, the sugarcane juice needs to be diluted. They bring it down to a specific 50 grams per liter sugar concentration.
Why that specific concentration?
It's crucial because the specialized bacteria they're using, they just work best at that level. Once it's diluted, it's fed into these huge fermenters, basically giant bioreactors.
And in there.
That's where these specialized anaerobic bacteria get to work. They convert the sugar into a mix of butanol, acetone, and ethanol. People often just call it ABE.
ABE.
Yeah, it's a valuable chemical mix, pretty versatile for different industrial uses.
And the performance here, that's obviously key. The report mentions an impressive 99% conversion of sugars. That sounds incredibly efficient for biology.
It is. 99% conversion is definitely high end.
Yeah.
Almost exceptional for this kind of industrial fermentation.
So what does that mean in practice? Maintaining that, is it common or really cutting edge?
It suggests they've got really robust bacterial strains and incredibly tight control over the process conditions, precise temperature, pH, nutrients, all that stuff.
But it also means
It also means they have very little room for error. Any slip up in those critical parameters could tank that conversion rate really fast, which hits their yield, hits their profit.
okay. So it's impressive engineering, but also maybe a weak spot operationally.
Could be. It's a point of vulnerability for sure.
And the yields from this super efficient conversion, they're quite specific.
Exactly. For every gram of sugar the bacteria eat, the process is expected to give you 0.20 grams of butanol, 0.10 grams of acetone, and 0.05 grams of ethanol.
Okay.
And if you scale that up over the whole season, it translates to an annual capacity of nearly 25,000 tons of that total ABE mixture.
Yeah, 25,000 tons.
Yeah, to break it down. 14,256 tons of butanol, 7,128 tons of acetone, and 3,564 tons of ethanol per year. These are, serious industrial volumes.
Wow, those are substantial numbers. And to achieve that, the equipment scale is kind of surprising. 17 fermenters, each one 500 cubic meters.
Yep, huge.
For context, that's roughly the volume of a large Olympic-sized swimming pool.
Each.
17 of them.
It's a lot of biological activity humming along in there. And that scale, it brings its own engineering challenges,
Yeah.
Getting the bacteria started, ensuring good mixing, keeping the temperature right across those massive volumes.
Right, so once fermentation's done, the ABE mixture, the wine, as they call it, moves to area B002, distillation.
Exactly. Yeah. This is where they separate that crude ABE mixture into its high purity components. This area uses a pretty intricate setup, 5 distillation columns and a decanter.
5 columns.
Yeah. They meticulously separate the products into high purity streams. They're aiming for an impressive 99.5 weight percent butanol and acetone. Getting that purity is vital for the market value.
Okay, 5 distillation columns, the decanter. Sounds like a complex dance of chemistry and engineering. Why so elaborate?
Well, it's complicated because the components butanol, acetone, ethanol, they have pretty close boiling points, and they also form these things called azeotropes.
Hagiotropes.
Yeah, they're mixtures that boil at a constant temperature and composition. Makes them really hard to separate just by simple distillation.
Ah, okay.
So the multiple columns in the decanter, they're designed to exploit tiny differences in volatility and how well they mix to get that super high purity, which
Yeah.
again, you need to get premium prices in industrial markets.
Makes sense. The challenge is doing it effectively and efficiently.
Exactly. Efficiently is the key word there.
And speaking of efficiency, that brings us to the hitting costs, because this is where it gets really interesting, especially for what's supposed to be a green bioproduct, right? Butanol production sounds promising technically, but it's known for being energy hungry.
That's a critical point. And honestly, one of the project's biggest hurdles, that distillation process alone, it just eats up steam.
How much steam are we talking?
The report says with a butanol concentration of about 9.9 grams per liter in that fermentation wine, the distillation unit demands 29 gigajoules of steam for every single ton of butanol produced.
29 gigajoules. Just for the distillation. How much energy is that, really?
Well, to put it in perspective, that's roughly the energy you get from burning, say, 700 kilograms of coal, just to distill 1 ton of butanol.
Wow, that sounds like an enormous amount of energy.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, the overall energy footprint for the entire process is substantial. It's 29.6 gigajoules of steam per ton of the ABE mixture produced.
Okay, 29.6 DJ per ton, ABE.
But here's the really fascinating and kind of concerning part. That energy consumption, it represents about 93% of the actual energy content of the ABE mixture itself.
Wait, 93%? So you're putting almost as much energy in as you're getting out in the final product's energy content.
Pretty much. And this isn't just a number. It fundamentally challenges the green credentials of this particular butanol pathway.
Right. It makes it potentially less attractive than other biochemical routes or maybe even some traditional fossil fuel alternatives, even though it starts with renewable sugarcane.
Exactly. A huge chunk of the energy from the sugarcane isn't ending up in the usable product. It's being burned just to separate it.
That's a crucial point for sustainability and economics. It makes you really question if the green label holds up under that energy load.
And what about other environmental impacts? Specifically, the liquid waste.
Vinasse?
Vinasse, is it called?
Vinasse, yeah. That's the liquid stuff left over after fermentation and distillation. Typically, it's used for fertigation on sugarcane fields.
Yeah, basically using this nutrient-rich liquid waste to both irrigate and fertilize the land. It's common practice, usually beneficial.
Okay, but there's a catch.
There's a significant cost involved. The report says 70 US cents per cubic meter just to transport it from the plant out to the fields.
70 cents a cubic meter.
Okay.
But here's the other thing. How does its environmental footprint, specifically waste generation, compare? This butanol plant, it's projected to generate 46 cubic meters of vinasse for every cubic meter of ABE.
46 cubic meters. How does that compare to, say, ethanol?
Well, contrast that with a typical ethanol plant. They produce maybe 3 to 4 times less vinasse, usually around 10 to 15 cubic meters per cubic meter of ethanol.
Whoa, 3 to 4 times less. Why the huge difference?
It's mostly because of that dilution step we talked about earlier for the butanol fermentation. Ethanol fermentation uses much more concentrated juice.
So just to make the butanol bacteria happy, you end up generating way more liquid waste than a standard ethanol plant. Essentially, yes. It's like you said earlier, maybe having to carry 3 times as much water just to make your coffee.
So beyond the direct transport costs, what are the longer-term sustainability issues for Hyzon, managing that much more waste on their land?
That's the question. The increased volume means way higher transport costs, obviously,
Okay.
but also potential logistical headaches and environmental challenges. Fertigation is good, but a massive increase in volume could lead to over-application, maybe messing with soil health or groundwater if it's not managed, like, perfectly.
So that dilution step, while needed for fermentation, really complicates their waste management. Another trade-off.
A trade-off they have to manage very carefully.
Okay, these hidden costs, the energy drain, the vinasse management, they definitely paint a challenging picture on the operations side. But, ultimately, the success of any huge project like this, it comes down to the numbers, the bottom line.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into the financials, starting with the big upfront cost. Capital expenditure, CapEx, what's the damage?
The total estimated investment cost for this new butanol plant is 169 million R. That's Brazilian reais.
A hefty sum. How does that break down?
Well, about 56% of that capex goes towards the fermentation area, B001, and 44% is for the distillation area, B002.
Okay, fermentation is the bigger chunk. Makes sense with those huge tanks.
Yeah, given the scale of those 17,500 cubic meter fermenters, plus all the gear for media prep, sterilization, control systems, it adds up.
How does that investment stack up against similar projects?
That's interesting. If you look at it relative to the plant's production capacity, it comes out to about 1.35 US dollars per kilogram of ABE.
Is that good, bad, average?
It actually falls right within the typical range you see for similar chemical plants, which is usually somewhere between 1 and 3 US dollars per kilogram of capacity. So the estimate seems pretty reasonable, industry-wise.
Okay, so it's in the ballpark. That's reassuring. But we have to remember this project gets a big boost from being an expansion, right?
Huge boost. It doesn't include costs for brand new cane milling or, say, power cogeneration facilities. If they were starting from total scratch, that capex number would be much higher. That's a major advantage they're leveraging.
Definitely. Okay, so that's CapEx. What about the ongoing costs, operational expenditure, OpEx?
The total annual operating costs are estimated at 125 million R2.
$125 million a year. What are the main drivers there?
Well, 2 things really stand out. Sugarcane itself is the biggest variable cost by far. It makes up almost 56% of the OpEx.
56%. Wow.
Yeah, that's nearly 70 million R per year, just for the raw material. It really highlights how dependent they are on a fluctuating agricultural commodity price.
That's a massive chunk of the annual budget tied to cane prices. What's the other big one?
Steam. Remember the energy intensity we discussed? Steam accounts for almost 30% of the OpEx.
Right, nearly a third of the operating cost is just for steam.
Yep, that's about 37 million Rs per year.
Yeah.
Other costs are smaller electricity, cooling water, dilution water, and that vinasse disposal we talked about.
And fixed costs.
Fixed costs like maintenance, they estimate that at 2% of CapEx and labor at 1% of CapEx. Smaller, but still significant parts of the puzzle.
So this really shows a project that's super sensitive to both feedstock prices and energy costs. A classic challenge in bioprocessing.
Very common challenge.
Okay, so with all those costs and the big upfront investment, let's talk payoff. Show me the money. What are the projected annual revenues?
The report indicates the plant is expected to generate about 147 million rolls in annual revenues.
147 million coming in. against 125 million rolls going out in OpEx plus the initial CapEx to pay back.
Exactly. And butanol is definitely the star product here. It accounts for 65% of that revenue.
65% just from butanol.
Yeah, that's almost 95 million rolls per year just from butanol sales. Acetone, ethanol, and selling any excess electricity also contribute significantly. But butanol is really the main income stream.
Which means the whole project's success is massively tied to the market price of butanol.
Heavily tied, yes.
So, revenues, costs. Let's get to the economic reality check. Is this actually a good investment? The report uses a typical discount rate of 10%, right? That's Hazen's benchmark.
Right, that 10% reflects their hurdle rate, their cost of capital, what they expect projects to return, minimum.
Okay, so using that 10% rate, what's the net present value, the NPV? That tells us the total projected profit in today's money.
The NPV comes in at a negative 18.7 million.
Negative, ouch. So it's actually projected to lose money over its lifetime based on these numbers.
Based on these numbers and that discount rate, yes. And the internal rate of return, the IRR, which is like the project's own inherent annual rate of return, it's 8.2%. Which is below their 10% target.
So it doesn't clear the hurdle. It's like the project isn't generating enough interest to meet the company's minimum requirement.
Exactly. And the discounted payback period, how long it takes to earn back the initial investment, adjusted for the time value of money.
How long is that?
Stretches out to 21 years.
21 years. That feels very long for recouping such a big investment, especially in a market that can change.
It's generally considered a very long horizon for most industrial projects, yeah.
So what does this all mean for Hazen? Bottom line.
Well, based on this analysis, the project is just not economically viable at their target 10% discount rate. Plain and simple.
It's basically a no-go based on these figures.
Pretty much. For the project to even break even, just to hit an NPV of 0,
yeah,
the minimum selling price for butanol would need to be 693 3-hours per ton. That's about $1,387 US per ton. If current market prices are below that, the business case just isn't there. Not with these assumptions.
Okay, that's a tough pill to swallow after all that planning. But, you know, in the world of big industrial projects, you always play the what-if game, sensitivity analysis, right?
Absolutely, you have to.
What variables really move the needle here? What could potentially flip this into being viable?
Right, the sensitivity analysis is crucial for understanding the risks and seeing where the leverage points are. And the analysis confirms, yeah, the project's viability is highly sensitive to changes in just a few key areas.
Like what?
Like the butanol price. A mere 4% increase in the market price of butanol. That would be enough to push the project's NPV into positive territory. Make it viable.
Only 4%. That's a surprisingly small margin. It really shows how delicate the balance is.
It is, but it also means opportunity if the market shifts just a bit in their favor. Conversely, a 6% decrease in the price of raw sugarcane could also make the project profitable.
Again, a pretty small change highlighting that massive dependence on feedstock costs.
Exactly. Or look at the investment cost itself, a 13% reduction in the initial CapEx. That would also achieve viability.
13%. Maybe achievable through clever engineering or negotiation.
Possibly. And even a small improvement in the fermentation efficiency. Remember those yields. Going from 0.20 to just 0.21 grams of butanol per gram of sugar consumed. That tiny bump could also make it viable.
So efficiency really matters. And maintaining that high sugar conversion, near 99%, that's critical too.
Absolutely critical. Any drop there would have a strong negative impact very quickly.
And what's fascinating here is thinking about the productivity risk. The report mentions that if butanol productivity dropped to a lower value, maybe 0.10 grams per liter per hour,
which some scientific literature suggests is possible with different bacteria or less optimal conditions.
Right. If that happened, the number of fermenters needed would just explode, wouldn't it, to an impractical 66?
Exactly. Imagine that plant. 3 times the number of those Olympic pool-sized fermenters.
And the NPV?
It would plummet to a staggering negative $258 million. It would be a financial disaster.
Wow. That just hammers home how crucial hitting those high efficiency and productivity targets is for the whole economic model. It's not just nice to have, it's make or break.
Absolutely. It's a stark reminder of the engineering and biological challenges involved. A drop like that completely unravels the economics, makes it physically and financially impossible.
So to get a more complete picture of the risk, beyond just tweaking one variable at a time, They did a Monte Carlo simulation.
Yes, a Monte Carlo analysis. It's a powerful technique. It runs thousands of simulations,
Hmm.
randomly varying all those uncertain factors, butanol price, cane price, capex, yield conversion, all within their likely ranges.
To see the probability of different outcomes. And the result of that complex simulation, what's the overall risk picture?
The result. It shows there's only a 40% probability that this project will actually achieve a positive net present value.
40%, less than a coin flip's chance of making money.
Exactly. And think about that. For a company like Hyzon, considering a massive $169 million runner-dollar investment, 40%, that's not just a maybe not viable signal. That's a flashing red light for any conservative investor or board member.
Yeah, that would definitely make you pause. It really calls into question if the technology or the market conditions are truly ready for this scale of deployment.
It says.
Wow. Okay, so we've really navigated the complex landscape of Hyzon's proposed butanol plant, from the intricate engineering, the fermentation, the distillation,
Through the big energy questions, the environmental aspects like vinasse.
and finally landing on the financial prospects. It's been a really fascinating look behind the curtain at how these decisions get made.
And the core challenge seems pretty clear, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Despite the technological promise and the smart move of leveraging existing infrastructure and the opportunity to expand,
Yeah.
the initial techno-economic analysis, especially including that Monte Carlo simulation, just paints a really challenging picture. That 40% probability of a positive return, it's just very low for this kind of money.
So the decision for Hyzon, based purely on this thorough report, it seems like it would likely not be a green light, not under the current assumptions anyway.
Correct. It's a calculated risk that, right now, just doesn't seem to meet their financial hurdles. The numbers just don't add up sufficiently to justify that level of risk.
It really shows how complex that transition to a bioeconomy can be. It's not always straightforward.
Not at all. It's a testament to those complexities.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought for you, our listener, to consider as you reflect on this deep dive. In this whole push for sustainable chemicals, for new bioproducts like butanol, how do we really weigh the technical feasibility? The fact that we can make it work against the cold, hard economic realities.
And those often underestimated environmental footprints, like the energy use or the waste generation.
Yeah.
What level of risk are companies actually willing to embrace for innovation, especially when you're scaling up these relatively new biotechnologies?
And how do those constantly fluctuating market prices for the raw materials like sugarcane and for the final products like butanol, how do they ultimately shape these huge, high-stakes, multi-million-dollar investment decisions? What stands out to you from this deep dive into Hyzon's ambitious but ultimately uncertain butanol project?